And it's actually hilarious because out of all the things I posted that day, that was the one post that everyone chose to see. It just goes back to the way our world is and works. I'm not here to complain about it. I just exist.
You thunder against me!
You have done that yourself.
Do you remember this moment? Of course you do. It's one of the most iconic in NBA playoff history. 24-year-old Kyrie Irving rises up over Steph Curry in the last minute of Game 7 of the NBA Finals to give the Cavs the lead and subsequently their first title in franchise history. It's an incredible play from an incredible player, and now, many years later, makes me incredibly nostalgic for a time where we could all just enjoy watching this guy play without also having to consider anything extra. And look, let me just go ahead and clarify this up front. I believe very strongly that athletes should be allowed to have opinions that go beyond their sport and have the freedom to express those opinions. But with that freedom comes consequences, and with Kyrie Irving specifically, what I think continues to be an issue that's affected more and more people is the apparent desire to have the first without the second. For the purposes of this video, I'm not as interested in the specifics of what got him suspended in 2022 or even how we should respond to it, as I am the sequence of events that led up to it. When the Cavs drafted Kyrie first overall in 2011, they did so in an attempt to try and begin to fill the giant gap left by LeBron James. They were rebuilding and hoping that Irving, coming off of his one season at Duke, would become the new face of their franchise. And the early returns on that were really solid. Kyrie averaged 19, 5, and 4 in his first season and ended up winning Rookie of the Year. The Cavs as a team were still pretty terrible, but with Irving and fellow rookie Tristan Thompson both showing a lot of promise, things appeared to be at least headed in the right direction in a more long-term sense. Enough so that, by the summer of 2014, the Cavs project had attracted the attention of the biggest possible fish in the NBA pond. And that is where things both get better and worse for Kyrie Irving. No matter who you are, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Anthony Davis, or, yes, Kyrie Irving, if you're on a team with LeBron James, you know that you're always going to be second banana. In 2014, the King himself announced that he was coming back to Cleveland, which was great news in one sense for a team and a franchise that hadn't been very good for a while, but also meant a hard pivot in terms of overall strategy. You don't sign LeBron James to be a part of a rebuild. You sign him to win now, which meant that the Cavs had to get as much top-level talent as possible on their roster as quickly as possible. But while their roster now had 3 bona fide All-Stars on it instead of just the one, it was James, not Irving, who the Cavs had moved heaven and earth for, and would continue to throughout his time in Cleveland. And you can't really blame them for doing that. He was the best player in the world, but a lot of the moves the Cavs made were done in an effort to help out LeBron, if not done at his direct request. My favorite one of these was them trading not 1, but 2 first-round picks to the Nuggets for Timofey Mozgov, a player who, for his career, had a 0.0 VORP rating, meaning that he literally could not have been more average if he tried. The Cavs' shift in strategy from essentially being all in on winning later to suddenly needing to do the exact opposite was an enormous risk, especially now that they'd traded away a big chunk of their future assets for ready-made talent. And in the short term, it worked. Kyrie hit that shot and the Cavs finally won a title. But then, things started to drop off a little. They weren't the 1 seed in the East anymore. They were absolutely ripped apart by the Warriors in the finals, and the team looked even more top-heavy than it had in the previous couple of seasons. With their star player on yet another short-term contract and rumors already swirling that LeBron had his eyes fixed elsewhere, their point guard decided it was time to make his own move. In July 2017, ESPN's Brian Windhorst wrote that Kyrie Irving, just a few weeks after getting beat by the Warriors in the finals, had requested a trade from the Cavaliers. In that article, Windhorst said that Kyrie wanted out of Cleveland to be more of a focal point somewhere else, but also added that him wanting to leave might have had something to do with not wanting to play with LeBron anymore. There was also some reporting that said that Irving had been put off by the Cavs shopping him around as a potential trade piece. Whatever the reason for the trade request was, and it's probably a combination of everything I just mentioned and more, details of a meeting between Irving, his agent, and Cavs owner Dan Gilbert leaked pretty soon after it happened. And in his words, the context of his request would soon become, quote, distorted by the media and fans. In any case, in August of 2017, Kyrie Irving was traded to Boston, where he would indeed become a focal point, but probably not exactly in the way that he might have wanted. After his first year with the Celtics saw them reach the Eastern Conference Finals, which Kyrie missed because he was out with an injured knee, Irving, who could opt out of his contract at the end of the season, surprised everyone by publicly committing to sign with the Celtics long-term that summer. And why wouldn't he want to do that? Boston was a young, up-and-coming team that was absolutely loaded with talent and had an incredibly competent coach and GM who could help make them all better. But as his second year with the Celtics continued to unfold, things changed. The team that was supposed to be at the top of the Eastern Conference was instead right in the middle, and Irving, whose role in the team was perhaps not as clear as he would have hoped as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown continued to improve, started to slowly but surely walk that initial commitment back. And by that I mean he told reporters that he didn't know anybody's and was going to do what he wanted regardless of what he said a few months ago. And is there anything wrong with that? Not inherently. He was a free agent and was well within his rights to sign with whomever he wanted to. But he also opened himself up to a lot of criticism in the process. And this is where things with Kyrie have traditionally gotten a little complicated. Irving, of course, did not re-sign with the Celtics, instead choosing to sign with the Brooklyn Nets, alongside his friend and fellow superstar Kevin Durant. What's frustrating about Kyrie's statement that he wanted to sign with the Celtics long-term is that it's actually one of the few times you'll ever hear him come out and say something definitive, which is ironic because he went back on it within a matter of months. Normally, the protocol with Kyrie when he's confronted with a direct question is to obfuscate and make things as complicated as possible as much as possible. Hey, Kyrie, are you going to follow through on that thing you said a while back? Whoa, dude, that's a lot of words for a yes or no question. It's not a bad thing to have a lot of thoughts, or even to be a little loquacious in expressing them at times. Most athletes just spew cliches when they're asked about literally anything, which is annoying, and definitely not something that you could ever accuse Kyrie Irving of. But when the Nets went to Boston in 2019, which Kyrie wasn't there for because he was rehabbing a shoulder injury, Celtics fans let their feelings about their former star be known. And Kyrie, in a way that only he could, let his feelings be known right back. Cryptic Instagram posts that say a lot while also not really saying anything are fine in most cases, if not a little confusing. That sort of thing has become Kyrie's go-to tactic in a lot of cases over the years, but since he signed with the Nets in 2019, the stakes of the issues that Kyrie has chosen to take a stand on have shifted dramatically. Less than a calendar year after going to Brooklyn, the world broke, and the landscape of the NBA changed along with it. The debate around the virus and vaccines and lockdowns and everything else that came along with it was now playing itself out in the league, with players and teams becoming important voices for everything that was going on, or, directly against them. Kyrie Irving was not the only NBA player to hop aboard the anti-vaccine conspiracy theory train, but he was certainly the most well-known and the most influential. A Rolling Stone article from 2021 highlighted a series of Instagram posts that Irving liked, linking vaccines to secret societies that were doing that. And naturally, that kind of thing, combined with the fact that Irving's choice to not get vaccinated was prohibiting him from playing games in states where there were mandates, including New York, got people asking questions. Why was Kyrie making this decision? Was he gonna sign a new contract with the Nets or go to another team that wouldn't require him to get vaccinated? Reporters like ESPN's Nick Friedel asked Kyrie about this kind of thing over and over again, but just like he'd done in the past, he mostly gave them a bunch of words that, when put together, didn't seem to actually say a whole lot. Eventually, the mandates were removed and Kyrie was allowed to play in New York again, but the memory of how he'd behaved during that time stuck around. Which brings us to what happened in late October 2022.
All the league and so many people within the Nets organization wanted to hear were the words, "I'm sorry." And Kyrie did not want to go there. He fell short of getting to that point. They also wanted to hear, "I don't have anti-Semitic beliefs." In Kyrie's own way, he answered it, but he did not say those words. So as we're walking back to transcribe everything we had just heard, I think a lot of people were just looking around like, oh man, Kyrie could make this so much easier for himself moving forward by just answering the questions.
To be completely fair, Kyrie has been far from the only distraction around the Nets camp in recent months. Kevin Durant requested a trade, Steve Nash's job was under significant scrutiny, and after being swept out of the first round of the playoffs by the Celtics, the team had gotten off to a surprisingly bad start to the new season. So it wasn't great news when Kyrie used his Twitter account, which has over 4.5 million followers, to promote a movie that is, to put it mildly, unkind in its representation of Jewish people and their history. The less charitable way of describing it would be to say that both the film and the book it's based on are full of misinformation and rhetoric that a lot of people understood to be anti-Semitic. So reporters following the team, doing their job, asked Kyrie if he himself shared any of those beliefs specifically. And his answer, well, I'll just let you listen to it.
when I repeat myself that I'm not going to stand down, it has nothing to do with dismissing any other race or group of people. I'm just proud of my heritage and what we've been through. And the fact that this has pinned me against the Jewish community. And I'm here answering questions of whether or not I'm sorry or not on something I didn't create. And it was something I shared. And I'm telling everybody I'm taking responsibility. Then that's where I sit.
After this exchange, which was not the only one of its kind, the Nets took matters into their own hands, suspending Kyrie for failing to disavow anti-Semitism and saying that until he did so, he was unfit to be associated with the organization. Ouch. A steep and fairly unprecedented punishment for what all traces back to a single ill-advised tweet, but that's kind of the point. Why is it so hard to contextualize what's been going on with Kyrie Irving? Well, because Kyrie's shenanigans are not like the shenanigans we've seen from NBA players in the past. If Gilbert Arenas gets suspended for a year for bringing guns into the locker room, we kind of get that. OJ Mayo gets suspended for taking PEDs, that makes sense too. But as he's pointed out a couple of times in this whole ordeal, Kyrie didn't do anything illegal. But what he did do is take a pattern of behavior that he's exhibited for basically his entire career to its absolute extreme. And for that, yeah, he's kind of brought a lot of this on himself. Searching for answers is a good thing. As a professional educator, that's the kind of instinct that I try really hard to encourage, but just like I tell my students, where you choose to search for those answers, who they come from, and how you choose to present them is important too. Especially if you've got millions of people who are really eager to hear what you have to say, you might need to be a little more careful about what you choose to endorse, intentionally or otherwise. And I know that Kyrie would probably counter by saying that he's just asking questions, mostly because he's literally said that verbatim in the past. But he seems to want to live in a world where he can just ask questions without just giving answers. And that's just not how any of this works. If Kyrie's going to make the conscious choice to not elaborate on what actually happened when he left Cleveland, he can't then say later that the media distorted him requesting a trade in the first place. You had the chance to clear everything up, but you chose not to. If you come out with a controversial stance on an issue and a journalist has questions about it, it actually benefits you to just answer them and not, belittle them in their entire profession. And I do mean answer them, because whatever this is doesn't count. I mean, what are we even talking about here? Vaccines? Black Lives Matter? That movie whose name I don't feel comfortable saying? Which one is it? It could be literally any of them, and that's the point, because it's actually none of them. This is a 2-paragraph quote from a radio interview Kyrie gave back in 2017 about him thinking the Earth is flat, and it both says a lot and absolutely nothing at the same time. As a basketball player, Kyrie is an incredibly creative finisher, as well as a highly cerebral processor of what's in front of him. He's an extremely intelligent and conscientious person, both on and off the court, which is also one of the things that makes him so unbelievably frustrating. So much of this could have been avoided if Kyrie would stop trying to spin intellectual circles around everyone and just be honest. He's a man who sees things a little differently, and on its own, that's a perfectly healthy and good instinct. He loves a challenge and isn't afraid to ruffle a few feathers to make sure that he's in a place where he's growing. That's admirable. He's also a bit of a contrarian, which can be annoying sometimes, but is also an important part of coming to a larger understanding about how the world works. But for his NBA career to continue to where it belongs, which is in the Hall of Fame, he's got to figure out a better way to deal with pushback on that different understanding of the world. Because those press conference questions aren't going anywhere, nor are the controversies he's already created while he's been on this path of enlightenment. For his sake, and that of every basketball fan around the world, I hope Kyrie's future in the NBA looks a lot more like this and a lot less like what his career has turned into lately. Hey everybody, it's Will. Hope you enjoyed the episode because it was honestly one of the hardest ones I've had to make so far. Writing about controversial subjects is always tricky, but for whatever reason, this took a lot more mental energy than even the episodes we've done on systemic racism or sports washing or anything of that nature. If you did like what you saw or heard, please let us know by giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel for more content like it. Definitely more lighthearted content, though, because I can't do an episode like that more than every once in a while. My head would explode. We'll be back soon to explore the stylings of one of my favorite athletes on the entire planet, and we hope to see you back here for that. But until then, that's all we've got for you. Bye.